Raluca, and yes, I'm coming from Bucharest, Romania. I don't know if you've ever been there, but the funny part, when I told everyone I'm coming to London this week, everyone warned me about the high temperatures and how I'm gonna die and the heat and everything. And I arrived here and I was like, is that all you got, Britain? So yeah, if you remember something about Bucharest, you gotta know that our summers are like 40 degrees, so no wind, no nothing, so yeah. And I think this also takes me to the topic that we are going to cover today. I'm a digital marketer, a performance marketer, as many of you are, but I think that a topic that we sometimes don't have time for is the communication message and how this communication message adapts to our buyer persona, to the person we are talking to, and to the context they are in, so that we don't have mismatches like this with the temperature and so on. So as everyone was mentioning today, and Friedrich this morning, and also Sam yesterday, things in digital marketing have become more and more automated. And what we are now facing, especially as agencies and marketers, I don't know about you, but I work a lot with e-commerce clients, and what is happening is that they give us their budgets for Facebook ads, Google ads, and so on, and it feels like, okay, you go there, you do your black magic, it feels like you're sort of a genie in a bottle, and you have in your back pocket some clients with their average order values, and what you put out are transactions, cost per customer acquisition, return on ad spend, and so on. That is how it feels like most of the times. Especially in the conversations I also see on Twitter, and the conversations we have with our clients, they're exactly like this. If I just increase my budgets, I have a 70% promotion on my e-commerce website, why am I not selling more? You're doing something wrong. I was saying about those 70% promotions, also how things look like, and I saw that they look the same on the UK market. If we look at the creatives, at the messages we are actually putting out there in social media, on our websites, and in PPC campaigns, they usually look more or less like this. So not all the time, but they are usually like 70% discount, 30% discount, free returns, free deliveries, free everything, 10% customer loyalty, membership, and so on. It feels a bit desperate, and it also feels a bit like everyone is trying so hard. Like on the short term, everybody wants to sell now. It feels like we are all putting so much pressure on a banner, and everything goes out there on the same banner. And I don't know if you know, but actually from all the surveys I've seen, actually the time of looking at a banner on the customer side is somewhere around 0.9 seconds. So each one of us looks at a banner less than 1 second on average. And in less than 1 second, you have to see that we have free returns, free deliveries, discounts, and so on, and everything now, and you have to buy. And this generally happens because of these two little guys that more or less we are all focusing on in our campaigns. We need to have a lower and lower customer acquisition cost and a lower and lower return on ad spend. What we sometimes forget, even though we know the basics very well, is the digital marketing strategy behind it. And when I say strategy, I'm not only referring to the macro landscape when you think about it like once a year, when we split our budget and so on. But I think that strategy is actually something we should take into account in each of our campaigns. I have put here a small recipe. I'm not a good cook, so if it doesn't make sense in cooking terms, this is why. But yeah, these are the things that we should take into account whenever we launch a campaign. I know very well that we don't have time and we don't always go through this, but sometimes when we are asking ourselves why it's not working, maybe coming back to the basics will make sense. So first of all, we need to know very, very well our target buyer personas. And when I say buyer personas, I don't mean just the target audience, like women 25, 45, but like knowing each profile, each client avatar that I am targeting. And you should know them so well as if you would go out for coffee with them on a daily basis, and you really know what their challenges are, what their fears are, why would they buy from you, why would they buy from a competitor. And coming to the competitor, you should also know who your competitor is in the eyes of every buyer persona. When we say competitors, we always look at it from our shoes, for what we are considering competitors. But actually, for our buyer persona, a competitor could be, I don't know, maybe buying offline, maybe not buying at all, or several other considerations that we are not looking into. So we should understand exactly what our competitor is in the eyes of our buyer persona. We should also look at our strengths and weaknesses. It's very, very important to always remember what our main differentiator is for each buyer persona, so that when we communicate like, okay, sale, 50% off, and so on, we should realize that this is not always the reason why people are buying from us, but what is the reason actually? So this is what we should know. And what is the reason that is like so personalized for us, and it's not something that is also available for one of our competitors, but that is something that our buyer persona really needs and really relates to. Another important thing here is that there is also a reason to believe behind our message. It's not important only to, it's like in any relationship, when you first meet on a first date, of course, each of the persons at that date is trying to sell an image to the other person. But if that image is not true, if you're just working on that, but it's not really true, it's not really going to catch. You know, it's always like it's not something long-term, and we should think things long-term. Another important thing is to do our media budget split, taking into account the marketing channels where our buyer persona is doing its information, where we can find our buyer persona. This is something very important. I always notice how in agencies and us as specialists and so on, we have to do things quickly. And we are like, Black Friday is coming, we have this budget, how are we going to split it? And we simply split it into Google Ads, Facebook Ads, Instagram, TikTok, and this is it. But we are not taking into account where we can find each of those buyer personas and where is the most appropriate channel to approach them. Is the context on that marketing channel appropriate for our buyer persona or not? Of course, Google search, Google shopping have this great advantage that the customer is there looking for us. But in social media, we should know that, of course, the customer is not there to buy. They are generally there to have fun, to procrastinate, to simply forget that they need to do something, that they need to spend money, and so on. And when we put all this into the recipe, then we get to the right message that we should communicate. And an important distinction here is that we will have several buyer persona profiles, and depending on the size of the business, maybe there will be more and more in time. For each of these buyer personas, I might have different messages to put forward. They may be different from each other because there are different sides of my brand personality that I'm putting forward. But I should always take into account, like the red tape, I should always take into account what is that core message that all the buyer personas resonate with and that really differentiates me from all of my competitors. And I should always take these into account. And this is something that doesn't need to take so much time, but it's something that I should always test my ideas and my messages against. Another important thing, when I'm looking at digital marketing, a model that is very, very popular and that really makes sense, and we all try to educate customers and educate e-commerce shops and everyone to understand is this conversion funnel. And it's a very good model that explains that, of course, customers go through various stages. It's not all about 70% off buy now and so on. It's about longer-term relationships. So sometimes the customer is in stage 1 and they need to find out about me and my product. Then they go to stage 2 and they need to be activated. And then they go to the conversion stage, the last stage. But there is something that I think is really, really wrong with this model. Or not really wrong with the model, but with the way we sometimes get to look at it. Us as human beings have less and less time, and us as digital marketers even less time. So we tend to oversimplify things. And what we lose here in this model is that sometimes we feel like, okay, the customers that don't go from stage 1 interest to stage 2 activation, we don't care about them anymore. Let them go. We just care about those that go to the second stage. And from the second stage to the conversion stage, the same thing happens. We simply ignore the ones that get away. It feels like it's something very healthy. They got away, we don't care about them, but actually this is a very short-term thinking if you think of it, because you're going to do business and you're going to need to sell to more and more customers and to grow your business more and more. And actually, how we should all look at things, and this is more like the content marketing approach is doing this a lot more, we should look at things through a relationship type of pipeline, I call it. We should look at each buyer persona and each customer as if they are going through all these stages with us, and like we take them by hand through one stage to the other. And for some of them, it takes longer to go from the stage where they find out about us and our products to the moment when they decide to maybe subscribe to our newsletter and to look more into our products and our offer. For some of them, it takes a lot longer before they first buy from us because maybe they are loyal to another brand. But it's important to have all these buyer persona profiles profiled so that I know what stage I am in with each of my customers. And I think that this is where the future of marketing is going, and there are a lot more and more tools into this. And what we can do right now, we don't have perfect tools for this, but I think we can change a bit our strategic approach. Because if we only look at things short term, and if we only look at converting and the lower stage of the funnel, what we are actually doing is that sometimes when we put our campaigns into conversion mode and we say that we want conversions now, what happens is that the AI behind and us are just remarketing the low-hanging fruits, the customers that are already convinced. And you have already probably seen this in analytics. Sometimes the best converting campaigns are actually those that have converted visitors that have already bought from you, that have already visited your site more and more. And you've seen this also in Performance Max, for example. You've seen probably that it really makes sense that most of the conversions come from the brand searches, for example, or from people who have already been on your website, from remarketing. So yeah, it makes sense that they are there because they help the algorithms learn. But on the other hand, it's like you save money now, but you pay later because actually you don't bring new people into the funnel and you're not taking care of the upper part of your funnel. So I think it's very important as a mindset to realize that when we think so short term and we put pressure on the results now and on having low cost conversions now, what we are doing is we are all pushing the lower part of the funnel. And it's like we're mixing and mixing this audience and showing them messages and so on. And it really feels like we are desperate. We are going to convert. But the bad part is that long term, this is actually going to cost us more. Especially as an agency, I know how difficult it is to make customers understand this, to make clients understand this. But I think it's something we should get to educate them. And an approach that would also help in this is to make the customer see the difference between the first two KPIs that we are of course measuring for every campaign, but also the long-term KPI. For example, knowing how much a customer costs you. If we look at all the conversion path and at all the different campaigns and marketing channels that we pay for, all the interactions, all the touch points between us and the customer, and also if we look not only at the revenue and the profit that the customer is bringing us now, but a recurring customer is bringing us actually a customer lifetime value. They are actually bringing us repeating orders. Of course, if our business model doesn't really mean recurring orders, this is a totally different story. But if we are in e-commerce, for example, in fashion, where people buy sometimes even several times per month, then of course it makes sense to look at this and to realize how much it makes sense to pay more for the first visit of a relevant customer, to pay maybe a little less to activate them and make them trust you, and then maybe not pay so much for the lower funnel stage. And a thing that we are implementing here for the moment is a different type of media plan. What we are trying to implement more and more, and we are now looking at how much money we save or not, and we are testing, is this multi-touch marketing blueprint. We are trying to change the media plan as it is, where you simply put there like, I don't know, 50% of your budget in Google ads, 30% in Facebook ads, and 20% in TikTok ads, and you don't even think how a customer that goes into both bundles reacts actually, and how much you pay for them. We are trying to split things into buyer persona profiles and to realize how much and on which channels we want to spend to generate interest, and that is to attract new audience from that buyer persona profile, how much we are going to spend in activating those that have already visited us and maybe to get them to subscribe to our newsletters and so on, and how much we are willing to spend to convert the already existing audience. Usually, I think that the biggest part of our budget when we are in the beginning should go to generating interest, or sometimes when we are just adding a new buyer persona profile. Maybe we have an established business, but now we want to grow our audience with new buyer persona profiles. For those profiles, we should definitely allocate a bigger budget in interest. And another important thing, in my opinion, is to look in a balanced way to this conversion stage. Because yes, of course, it makes sense that we allocate a lot of budget into converting customers and having clients this month and so on. But we've really optimized a lot of our results when we were looking in analytics at conversion path. And when we were looking at assisted conversions, and when we tried to make sense of how many touch points a customer really needs. And sometimes it may be surprising that if you don't really remarket that user for the 10th time this month, maybe you're just saving some money that you could use to target another customer, and maybe that customer would buy from you anyway because you're already top of mind, they already found out that you have a discount campaign, and when they want to buy, they will find you there. So yeah, there should be a balance between impulse shopping and also this part of measuring your relationship with each customer. Some important things here to take them like step by step and to give you some examples of how we try to do things and to actually bring some data here. An important part is, of course, this of how to gather data about your buyer persona profile. And in my opinion, I've looked at a lot of methodologies, from user interviews to applying Hotjar to our sessions, and also looking at data, to doing user testing videos and so on. But in my opinion, it's always a bit a matter of empathy and of trying to understand and testing your hypothesis. But of course, it's very important to start from the data. What a buyer persona profile should look like, it should contain more than detailed demographics, so more than age, married or not, and so on, a location, but it should also make sense of the challenges that person has when they buy, of the reasons behind buying, for example, or the reason behind making a choice. Because as we know, for example, I was talking about price and discounts. That's not always, or most of the times, it's not the reason why we are buying something. We're buying, for example, fashion for several reasons. Surveys show that some people buy fashion as something functional, others are focusing on the way we look in those clothes, on aesthetics, others think that fashion is more about status and it's more about representing who I am and my job status and my professional status and so on through what I'm wearing. And there are several other reasons. So where do we get data for this? An important source and the free source and so on, and one that we use is Google Analytics, and in GA4 we also find these reports more or less looking the same way. I think it's very important to look with secondary dimension at each demographic profile, like female, 25, 35, and so on. But not only to look at the number of visitors you have from that profile, but also, of course, at the number of customers, and to also look at, for example, conversion rate. It's important to know that maybe most of your customers are women, 25, 45, but you have a very high conversion rate from the male profile, 18, 24. This has happened to me several times. I found a buyer profile where there was a high conversion rate, and simply I didn't have more clients because I didn't bring more of that audience to my website. And this is something that you could test. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes when you bring more visitors from that profile, the conversion rate actually decreases, but it makes sense to try. And it's also important to know what the customers that bring you the highest average order value are, what are the customers that bring you the highest profile. And as an agency, you should ask about these, you should ask these questions to the client. In terms of location, it's the same thing. You should look at the buyer profile that you're attracting to your website, but also maybe look at locations that have a higher conversion rate, maybe lower CPC costs, and maybe these could be the low-hanging fruits you're looking for in your campaigns. Other important reports, affinity categories and in-market segments. Just to remind you, affinity categories show us the websites that our buyer profile is navigating, is browsing, and in-market segments is showing us what they are searching for on Google. When we use secondary dimensions with these reports, we will get closer and closer to buyer persona segments, and we will find out more about our customers. We will find out, for example, that yes, even though most of our audience is browsing news websites, those that have the highest conversion rate are actually those that are usually on lifestyle websites, and so on. Other resources for information about your buyer persona profile could be your Facebook Insights. And I'm not talking here only about your Facebook profile, but also we could use Facebook Audience Insights, for example, to find out what the people who usually engage with a certain brand, a competitor brand, or maybe a connected brand on Facebook, what else are they looking into, for example. YouTube Suggest is very important when we are thinking about the messages, when we are thinking about the messages we put in our banners and in our landing pages. I think that YouTube Suggest is very useful to find out what the video content concerns of our audience are, what information is lacking for them. For example, when they are looking for an iPhone, what other phone are they comparing it to? Because it doesn't make sense if in my landing page I'm comparing iPhone 13 with iPhone 12, if my buyer persona is mainly comparing it with Samsung, I don't know which. So it's important to realize exactly what they are comparing it to so that this is also what I am communicating. Keyword Planner is also a source of information, and the Refiner tool is also helping a lot nowadays because it gives you like a summary of brands that people actually correlate with the main keywords that from your category and so on. So for example, if you want to sell dresses, with the keyword refiner, you will see exactly what brands are most used in searches. Those are usually the brands that people have like top of mind when they are thinking about buying dresses online. So it's very important to know that. And also the keyword refiner is helping you find out what are the main attributes that the searches contain. Like for example, white dresses or I don't know, cotton dresses and so on. Another tool I really personally like a lot and helps a lot in research is SimilarWeb. Whether you are looking at the free version or the subscription version that also comes with monthly subscription, some interesting things that SimilarWeb shows about your audience are the audience interests. This is quite golden information in my opinion because sometimes you can find out things that are different from analytics. And also SimilarWeb helps you a lot with the competitor research, as it shows you exactly the marketing channels that bring traffic to your competitors. It shows you also more granular information about each channel, and it also shows you their creatives, the audience overlap between a competitor and another competitor, the cross-browsing behavior between you and one of your competitors, and also audience insights about each of these competitors. And honestly, this is information that we are always looking into, and it really helps grow our conversion rate and also our CTR in our campaigns. Another tool, I don't know if you know it, to just simply research the competition. I find it also very useful, Moat, and there are several other tools that do exactly the same thing, like it's like a database of creatives from competitors or from similar players and so on. And they help you see in an aggregated mode what your competitors are communicating. And it's always useful to look at this, even when it's like top season or Christmas and we already have our campaigns planned and we are all in a hurry to convert and so on. It's important to always look at what our competitors are promoting for that buyer persona profile and to see how we should differentiate from that. When we look at the message, we should always keep in mind that this message needs to be something that is unique for you, but also something that your competitors don't have or don't communicate. This is a slight difference that makes all the difference, and something that is really important for your buyer persona. So, coming to the basics, yes, this with the buyer persona, this is something that we should look into like quickly. Does it seem like this message I'm communicating here in my search campaign, in my shopping campaign, performance max campaign, whatever, does it seem like it's something adapted to my buyer persona? Just as Ayat was saying in the previous presentation, does it speak my buyer persona language? Is it the language that my buyer persona uses? Do they understand it? Is it something desirable? Because maybe I'm communicating discounts, but what would make them actually buy would be seeing that the dress is made of natural fibers, for example, or that this is a wonderful dress if you are a bridesmaid, for example, this summer. So does it cover a need that my buyer persona actually has? Is it credible? Is there a reason to believe behind it? And yes, is it relatable? Is it something that they can relate to? Is it the language that they use? So this would be one thing that our key message should cover. And then, yes, it would be ideal if it's not something that our competitors communicate. I've seen my clients tell me a lot that they don't want to communicate a certain message because it's nothing big, it's nothing special. Their competitors also have this functionality. Yes, but if their competitors are not communicating that functionality, then maybe the buyer persona would hear it first from us. And if it's something desirable for them, then maybe it would make sense and it would make a difference in our campaign. And yes, is it something that is differentiating us from their communication? Another important thing, if we look at the key message, and we need, for example, to put it in a banner, we should also ask ourselves in what stage of the funnel we are in. Are we trying to draw attention? What's the context? Are we on Meta, Instagram, TikTok, where the user is there to procrastinate simply and we need to draw attention? Are we in Google search where they are actually looking for us and we just need to, I don't know, to stand out and convince them that we have the best offer or the best service or they should pick us and click on us? Or are we on a news website where banners are flooding the website and we just need to get the user to notice us and then we need to stand out? And I think this helps make us the best decisions in terms of design, graphics, videos, whatever the creatives are about. Coming back to the split, to the whole split, I was saying that it's very important to choose your marketing channels taking into account each buyer persona. Because, for example, you could find out that a certain profile is present on Instagram, another one on YouTube. So maybe we don't need to go on YouTube and communicate to all of them because they are not there in the context where they could hear us. So it's very important to know that. I think that most marketing channels make sense for most of these stages and for most of these buyer personas, but it's important to know how we are using them, to do it quite consciously. Because, for example, I could be using YouTube ads to convert, but then the creative needs to be targeted to people who already know me, who have an interest in buying, and the message should be like, buy now because there are only 3 items left and I don't know, the promotion runs out and so on. Or it could be targeted at people who don't know me, and then I need to present myself and I need to explain why I'm so good and they should remember me. So it's important to use each channel in each context as consciously as possible. It sounds like a lot of work in the beginning, but it's actually, in my opinion, it's a very gradual process that you can just get better and better at if you always measure the results. In terms of budget split for each buyer persona, I personally recommend the 40-30-30 split because for generating interest, we always know that the costs are also higher because we are targeting a cold audience, an audience that doesn't know about us, and we need to get the most relevant audience. And therefore, for example, using a strategy like maximize clicks wouldn't help us because it's exactly what Frederick was saying this morning. When we are telling the AI that we want more and more clicks, they are giving us the cheapest clicks. But what we want when we are in this stage of generating interest, we want the most relevant customers, no matter how much they cost. So this is where I should be measuring impressions, reach, CTR, but also what happens on my website. Is it a high bounce rate? That's not good. Was it a problem on my website with my landing page, or is it a problem with the audience not being relevant? I should also be looking at the page views per session, conversion rate, further on, and so on. In the second stage, what I want is to remarket users, bring them on my website, and usually get some leads, get them to subscribe to my newsletter, get them in a communication with me. We need to make sure that our relationship with that customer continues. And yes, of course, we need to allocate budget for conversions. And an important thing here is that usually the creatives, the media, channels, and so on could vary. And these are just some examples of campaigns like campaign goals and also optimization techniques for each of them. But as I was saying, I think that most marketing channels and most formats could work for each stage of the funnel, but it's just important to do it in a very conscious manner. However, still, we can't say that dynamic remarketing, dynamic product ads are the best for our generating interest stage, because that's a stage where we need to explain to the customer why they should buy from us, who we are, and so on. So going for product ads usually doesn't work so well. I've put here, and I will share the slides with you, I've put here an example of also how to measure each stage of the funnel. And we have here a column of KPIs, of proposed KPIs, of what we should be measuring in each stage. Of course, it's more complicated to explain to clients, especially who need short-term results, why we should be measuring things like view rate, CTR, and so on, and impressions, but when we put it all in a strategy, it usually makes really good sense. And what we've noticed is that we usually really save money, but on a medium term and longer term. In the second stage, we should be measuring also things like relevancy, like lead subscription rate, and so on. And just in the last stage of this blueprint, we should be focusing on conversions, conversion rate, average order value, and so on. And last but not least, an important thing that I've already been pointing at, it's very important that our creatives, whether they are videos, whether they are reels, whether they are banners, or whether they are simply responsive search ads, differ between the stages. It's not that it's something mandatory, but it will make all the difference in terms of CTRs and also in terms of conversion rates in the end. So if we are in the first stage of generating interest, our banners should be more like, hey, this is me, this is why you should be buying for me. I haven't really found very relevant examples in time, but yes, they shouldn't be about buy now, 70% discount. They should be more about what your brand stands for, what you have different. For example, I like the message, even though it's a very crowded banner, but this one from ASOS says that we have over 850 brands, 2,000 new styles every week. So they give you something to look for on their website. So they explain who they are and what you will find in this relationship with them. For the second stage, it's more about communicating to someone who already knows you and communicating a new brand you have on the website, or a new product category, or maybe a new service that you launched. And in the third and most important for some of us stage, the conversion stage, of course, we communicate our sales campaign, or maybe a product and its price, or maybe urgency messages like this promotion expires in I don't know how many days or hours, or things like limited offer, 3 items left, and so on. So summing it all up, what I invite you to try and to test is to change the classical media plan to an approach focused on buyer persona profiles and on measuring each stage of the relationship that you have with that customer. And I also think, as I was saying, that a lot of tools are helping this, like CRM tools, like HubSpot, and so on. And I think that there will be more and more innovation in this in the future. Thank you. And you can scan that QR code and you will be taken to my YouTube channel, where I usually share bits of information and things I'm testing in digital marketing. If you have any question, now is the time.
Luca, yeah, any questions? No? Oh, well, keen to get to lunch, I see. So, yeah, if... Oh, we've got one over here.
The ice was broken.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you for your presentation, very insightful. I had a doubt about the budget split that you presented, because given that usually there are CPAs that are higher in the lower funnel, isn't too low 30% of the budget? I know that it depends very much on the products, on the industry, and so on, but...
Thank you for the question. It's actually a very good one. Because yes, it also depends on the stage of the business. Because if you're, for example, in the very beginning, then it's more for generating interest. If it's a certain period in time, it is more for conversion. So I think that's just an average to look into that helps us not focus so much on the conversion stage. So it's like an industry average. But of course, it depends a lot on the business.
Any other questions for Raluca? No? Oh, thank you very much, Raluca. Thank you.
Thank you.